I'm still, after all the fights you've had, in awe of the fact that you do what you do. It's mind blowing to me.
Thank you, man. Yeah. I mean, it's not that hard to get beat, but it was a great experience. Like, I learned a lot in there. I can't really talk.
When this fight was first announced, you had said something to the effect of this would end Jake Paul's career. After what you saw tonight, do you think that Jake should continue to box, or what do you think the future holds for him?
Yeah, no, I really take my hat off to. I mean, we have to see if it is a broken jaw. Those injuries are very difficult to come back from. But as AJ said, look, that last shot would have knocked out a lot of heavyweights.
So here's what's got every combat sports fan losing their minds right now. Jake Paul, that 28-year-old internet sensation who turned into a legitimate boxer, just dropped a bombshell announcement about walking away from the sport entirely. This comes on the heels of getting absolutely demolished by Anthony Joshua in Miami, where a vicious sixth-round knockout left him with his jaw shattered in 2 places and needing emergency surgery. We're talking about more than just your typical knockout here. This was career-ending brutal. Paul went from being this rising crossover sensation, trying to prove he belonged with real fighters, to leaving on a stretcher with facial bones that needed to be rebuilt with metal. Joshua's power was just on another planet. That devastating right hand came crashing down and changed everything in an instant. What makes this even more interesting is that Paul actually won a couple rounds on the scorecards before everything fell apart, proving he wasn't completely outclassed until that moment when Joshua reminded everyone why he's been a world champion.
And then I got dropped. But yeah, I was doing good. I just think my cardio, just the mental pressure of the big guy, and sparring the big people is different than the 10-ounce gloves. So I was feeling his power a lot more. But it was a great experience. Like, I learned a lot in there. I can't really...
Are you in pain?
Yeah, but it's not from, like, talking.
Talk to me about what your jaw feels like. Because you got,
it's like a baseball in there.
two plates?
It just feels like...
4 titanium plates.
4 titanium plates. How many do you have?
Just 1.
But wait, because this story gets way more intense and honestly pretty disturbing when you dig deeper. There's footage floating around where someone mentions a titanium rod in a hand, which just adds to how chaotic this whole mess became. Multiple sources close to Paul are saying he's completely burned out and mentally fried from absorbing the kind of punishment that comes with fighting elite heavyweights. This retirement talk apparently became serious after that knockout we just covered, and honestly, who could blame him? The fight wasn't just a loss, it was systematic destruction. Paul hit the canvas multiple times throughout the bout, each knockdown taking more out of him, building toward that final crushing blow that left his jaw in pieces and surgeons working overtime. When you're taking that level of damage from someone like Anthony Joshua, who's spent years demolishing world-class competition, it makes perfect sense to question whether you want to keep going down this road. There's even audio making the rounds where someone clearly states they're retiring from boxing, which has everyone wondering if this is really the end.
Hit in the fucking face every single day while I could be playing soccer in Saudi. I'm friends with the Saudis slash football.
Back in the day?
Back when I was in 7th and 8th grade, things were different.
I have a really good kick. I can run fast. And I'll knock out everyone that f***s with us.
Now here's where someone drops this absolutely insane line about needing $1 billion to prove some message, which sounds completely unhinged, but somehow fits this whole situation. Let's dive into what the people behind the scenes are actually saying about all this, because their reactions reveal just how serious things have gotten. Eddie Hearn, who promoted this fight and never holds back his opinions, isn't backing down from his prediction that this bout could literally destroy Jake Paul's boxing future. After watching it all unfold, Hearn's tone shifted from confident prediction to genuine worry when reflecting on his pre-fight warning about Paul's career potentially ending. He wasn't celebrating being right about his prediction. Instead, Hearn showed real concern, breaking down how injuries like this double jaw fracture requiring surgical reconstruction with metal plates and screws create problems that go way beyond just physical pain. The recovery isn't just about bones healing, it's about all that time away from sparring that ruins your timing, slows your reflexes, and destroys your ring rhythm. Then there's the mental side. That fear of getting hurt again that creeps into your head every time someone throws a punch at your face, which can completely change how a fighter approaches combat forever. While Hearn gave Paul credit for his heart and willingness to face legitimate competition, something critics said would never happen, he emphasized that boxing doesn't care about your followers or your money. Moments like this knockout, these defining injuries, force fighters to have serious conversations about whether the physical risk and potential long-term damage justify whatever rewards might come from continuing.
Look, that guy did great for someone who's been boxing for like less than a decade. He has had no real professional opponents other than Tommy Fury that were legitimate world-class boxers.
I don't even remember what happened in the Tommy.
He lost a close decision, but it was a good fight. It was a good fight, though. He's a good boxer. If he wasn't a YouTuber, people would be way more impressed with him.
Yeah.
The problem is he was like a famous kid, and then no one took him seriously.
Yeah.
But
and then he started too with like more spectacle-ish fights. People were like, "Oh, this is you." He fought, Nate Robinson, like a basketball player.
But the thing is, he knocked Nate Robinson.
He knocked him
dead,
the fuck out.
And
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, who's witnessed every type of punishment a fighter can absorb over his decades of combat sports commentary, delivered maybe the most sobering response to this whole situation. After Paul got knocked unconscious by Joshua and suffered that double jaw break, Rogan used his podcast platform to urge Paul to think deeply about the long-term costs of continuing at this level. When Joe Rogan warns you about head trauma, that's something you need to take seriously, because he's watched countless fighters pay the ultimate price. Rogan stressed that the damage Paul absorbed, especially those crushing shots from a seasoned heavyweight like Joshua, who's been dominating at championship level for years, creates risks that extend far beyond visible injuries like broken bones. He talked about the neurological price fighters pay that builds up over time and simply isn't worth it for someone with other life options. Rogan discussed the long-term health issues many fighters face after retirement. Things like chronic brain injuries, memory loss, emotional problems, all the scary stuff we're learning about as brain injury research advances. He characterized the knockout punch Paul took as having the impact of multiple devastating shots compressed into one explosive moment, which is terrifying when you think about your brain bouncing around inside your skull. Rogan emphasized how quickly permanent damage accumulates in heavyweight boxing, where the power operates on a completely different level than smaller weight classes. His warning wasn't just about Paul or this specific injury. It was a broader cautionary message that repeatedly absorbing this level of punishment, especially from elite heavyweights, can permanently affect your brain function and life quality, and Paul should seriously weigh whether continuing this path makes sense when he has so many other successful opportunities available.
That I'm a cokehead. My rebuttal to that was, I'll tell you what, you can test me randomly for the next 5 years if I can test you randomly for performance enhancing the next 2 years. And I never got a response on that.
This is why Jake Paul is on PEDs. Within this past year, Jake Paul has literally hit a second puberty and aged like 10 years. Furthermore, he has acne and his hairline is receding like crazy. And people like Jake Paul are going to the best skin doctors in the world and probably are taking hair loss products that aren't even approved for the rest of us. Now, I'm not saying that Jake Paul necessarily took a steroid to make him look bigger, but he's definitely taking something that allows him to recover faster. That way he's able to train more and get better at boxing quickly.
Here's something that sounds completely crazy and has people wondering if this is serious or just Paul being his usual controversial self. That was actually pretty skillful, referring to something that happened during the fight. But get this wild development. Paul has allegedly claimed through various online reports and secondhand sources that he's thinking about actually using steroids to finally shut down all the accusations that have been following him around. The claims that he's been on performance enhancers throughout his entire boxing run, according to the internet buzz and these unverified reports, Paul suggested that by showing people the actual difference between his natural body and what he'd look like enhanced, he could somehow prove his previous physique and performances were achieved without chemical help. Critics are calling this claim completely reckless and inflammatory, the type of statement that could get him in serious trouble with boxing authorities and potentially create legal problems. His supporters think Paul is just fighting back in his typical aggressive style against years of speculation and direct accusations about his body transformation and the power he displayed in earlier fights. Considering boxing has incredibly strict drug testing rules and severe penalties, including suspensions, fines, and overturned results, most observers remain highly skeptical about whether Paul would actually go through with this claim. Others warn against taking any of this seriously, suggesting it might just be Paul creating controversy like he's done his entire career. Until Paul personally addresses these allegations on record and explains exactly what he meant and whether he's being serious, this statement remains completely unconfirmed and just adds another layer of drama to what's already been an incredibly chaotic period in his boxing journey.
The people need to respect him. I don't say that only because I'm fight here in a company, but it's because Jake, the people need to respect Jake, you know. I mean, every single fight go inside the ring, everybody needs respect.
Let's break down exactly what went wrong in that ring, because the specifics are genuinely disturbing when you hear the full story. Anthony Joshua completely destroyed Jake Paul's jaw during their heavyweight bout in Miami, and we're talking about one specific moment, one devastating punch that changed everything forever. The damage came when Joshua unleashed that bone-crushing right hand, the same weapon that's finished countless opponents throughout his championship run, connecting perfectly in the 6th round with the kind of accuracy and force that only world-class heavyweights possess. That punch dropped Paul immediately, he collapsed to the canvas, and eventually led to the knockout finish that ended the fight. But Joshua's punch created damage that went way beyond just putting Paul down. The impact shattered Paul's jaw in 2 different locations, what medical professionals call a double fracture, which is an extremely serious and agonizing injury that was obvious to everyone watching once the fight concluded. You could tell immediately that something was terribly wrong with Paul's face. Paul himself confirmed the injury through his social media, actually posting images of the damage, the swelling, the misalignment, everything visible and honestly hard to look at. Once the medical team examined him after the bout ended, Paul was rushed straight to a Miami hospital, where surgeons performed what sounds like major reconstructive surgery to fix the double break. The operation required installing 2 titanium plates, one for each fracture site to hold the broken bones together during healing. And here's the detail that really shows how severe this was. They had to extract multiple teeth as part of the surgical repair. Several teeth completely gone because of damage from that single punch. Paul shared an update from his hospital bed saying the surgery went well according to his medical team, and that he'd be restricted to liquids only for at least a week, possibly longer depending on his healing progress, while recovering from having his jaw completely reconstructed with metal hardware.
Don't ever give a monkeys about what anyone says, because they sit at home, they're full of negativity. It's like the people that are negative towards someone like Jake Paul. Look at what he's done with his life. Do you know what I mean? So yes, it took AJ a couple of rounds to get hold of him, and then he knocked him spark out and broke his jaw. It was a frustrating 2-3 rounds maybe, because Jake was moving so much, holding, but did well, I thought. I mean, I was impressed with him. I mean, I was more impressed with his toughness, because I think that last shot would have knocked out most heavyweights. I mean, you've got to respect him, because he did what many people wouldn't do, which was get in the ring with him. And, you know, he didn't, I know he run and hold, but he also let his hands go at times. And he was in the firing line, and, you know, we got 6 good rounds in the end of actual work.
You see it in the end?
Yeah, I actually think it's a positive, because, you know, we could have gone in there and got it all over with 45 seconds. He's done an 8-week camp, and now he's done 6 rounds. He's got something to go back and work on with the team, and onwards and upwards for a big 2026.
With all the conspiracy theories and speculation that always seem to surround Jake Paul's fights, let's tackle the biggest question people keep asking online. The devastating 6th-round knockout of Jake Paul by Anthony Joshua proved definitively that this fight was completely legitimate and absolutely not staged or predetermined, despite what many doubters and conspiracy theorists had been claiming on social media before the bout even took place. Promoter Eddie Hearn, who's been around boxing long enough to spot anything suspicious, directly and emphatically shot down every claim that the contest was fake or scripted in any way. He emphasized in several post-fight interviews that this was a fully legitimate professional boxing match with real consequences, overseen by official regulatory bodies with strict enforcement protocols and connected to legal gambling markets worldwide, which would make any fixed or predetermined result not just unethical, but actually criminal, and completely impossible to execute without hundreds of people being involved in the conspiracy. Consider the complexity of trying to rig a fight like this with so many regulatory agencies, cameras, officials, and betting operations watching every detail. It simply couldn't happen. Hearn also highlighted what he called the clearest evidence that everything was completely real, the severity of Paul's double jaw break, which was a legitimate injury requiring immediate surgical repair with titanium plates and tooth extraction. As Hearn stated directly, you absolutely cannot fake that type of injury in a professional fight. There's no scenario where Paul would volunteer to have his jaw fractured in 2 places and undergo reconstructive surgery just to support some conspiracy theory about the fight being rigged. The medical documentation, the surgery, the recovery period, everything confirms beyond question that what happened in that ring was 2 professional boxers competing at the elite level, and one of them absorbed a devastating and completely real knockout that ended his evening and potentially his entire career.